Encanto introduces us to a cast with really cool and diverse powers, but the primary focus of the movie is on the power of one character, Uncle Bruno, who is psychic and is able to see into the future. This is particularly important in regards to the main character Maribel, whose own powers or role in the family weren't quite spelled out to us by the end of the movie, but I think Bruno's powers tell us a lot about what Maribel's role actually is. Now, all of the powers in this movie are used to highlight facets of each character's personality and identity. The most striking example of this is the character Louisa, who has the power of super strength. When Louisa loses her super strength at different times in the movie, she doesn't lose her physical stature with it. While she no longer has super strength, she still looks to be a lot stronger than any of the other people in her family. The house itself is really just meant to symbolize a stable and steady home, one where the children are given the freedom to explore their natural talents in a way that can help the family and the community. Louisa was already strong, but the house made her super strong. Camilo is a favorite character of mine because of how funny he is, and while transforming to other people has not had any really important practical use in the show, it was shown that he mostly uses it for the sake of comedy and entertainment. Camilo was likely already a very entertaining child before getting his power, and was always destined to be the family hype man who greets guests and keeps people on their toes. Maribel's own mother has the power of healing people through her food, and as the main character's mother, it is very easy for us to see her the way many of us see our own mothers, as natural cooks who take care of us when we are sick and somehow make us feel better. While we don't see much of Antonio before he gets his power and can communicate proficiently with animals, Maribel explains when giving him a gift that he is already an animal guy, meaning he likely was going around playing with these animals before he even got his powers. The point is that this house doesn't just give these kids a random superpower. It takes into account what their actual role in the family is and what their natural talents are, and it enhances those talents with magic. Which of course brings us back to Bruno, why the house gave him the power of a seemingly faulty psychic, and why it gave Maribel no powers at all. A fun fact about my own history is that I actually worked for a somewhat famous Hollywood psychic known as Bill Burns for about 5 years before I actually started working here on Cartoon Universe. This guy had been on TV a lot. We even had several TV pilots made about us while I worked there, and you can still look up some of his TV appearances here on YouTube. I'll include some information about him in the description down below for those who are curious. Like Bruno, my psychic was not omniscient, and this led to a lot of controversy with the people surrounding him. Like Bruno, he would often predict something dark, only for people to be upset with him when it happens. I even have stories of famous celebrities this happened to that I'm not allowed to share. And sometimes, things wouldn't turn out exactly as he said. He'd still get unbelievably impressive things right, but they wouldn't turn out exactly as he had claimed, and he was never all that surprised about it either. You see, according to Bill Burns, there is a difference between what he called prediction and prophecy. Prediction was something akin to psychic statistics in his definitions. It was something he saw happening for a variety of reasons, but that did not mean that they were set in stone, whereas when something is actually a prophecy, it's pretty much unmovable and destined to happen. These terms are both meant to be somewhat flexible, but they can help us better understand what happened to Bruno within the show, who deals largely with prediction despite calling things prophecy. When it comes to the townsfolk, for instance, each of these predictions are something that they see as being Bruno's fault, but he likely saw those as inevitable. Goldfish die, men who eat poorly get guts, and some of them even lose their hair to genetics. Now, unlike Maribel's green glass prophecy, I don't think Bruno tapped into any intense power when telling the townsfolk these things. As we discussed earlier, all of the family's powers are really just extensions of their personalities and natural talents, so Bruno is going to have a natural sense of knowing what is going to happen, not as a psychic, but at just understanding the nature of things and the flawed nature of people's questions better than they do. When it comes to the townsfolk, he simply tells them what he knows to be obvious, and instead of using the knowledge to try and prepare themselves, they simply choose to blame him. We see this apparently even happened in his own family, such as with his sister's wedding. According to her, there wasn't any rain in the sky, and as a woman who controls the weather with her emotions, that meant she was in a good mood. Bruno apparently warned her that there would be rain. That upset her, and it caused not just rain, but a hurricane. According to Bruno, at the end of the film, this wasn't even a true prediction, but something he figured would happen simply because of Peppa's emotional nature, and it was his attempt to tell her that it's going to be okay, as if it was destined to happen, as that is just who she is. It was something he simply expected. As for the other family members, we don't really know if what he predicted for them was just simply on his own, or through the magic of green glass the way he does with Maribel. When it comes to Isabella, for instance, he promises that the life she wants would someday be hers and that her powers would grow, as at the time they seemed to mostly just be to conjure up flowers. She of course ended up revealing that she wanted not to marry the handsome man in town, and got that in the end, and her powers of course grew beyond what she thought was possible, moving from just flowers to all sorts of plants. Dolores is a bit of a different story. In hers, she claims that Bruno said that the man of her dreams would be just out of reach and betrothed to another. While he seems just out of reach, he was never technically betrothed to anyone else, not even to Isabella for the one night where he was supposed to ask her to marry him. This makes Bruno not only wrong about the inevitable outcome, but wrong about the premise as a whole. This seems to be entirely intentional though, as Bruno says at one point in the film that even his green glass prophecy of Maribel is not set in stone, that it could go either way, with her destroying or fixing the house. Ultimately, both end up being true, giving us no clear answer on the nature of Bruno's power in the world, but I think that it can at least give an answer to the nature of Maribel's role in the family. As I mentioned earlier, she is said to be the only person in her family with no powers, and when the prophecy shows up, it makes sense that the one child who did not get powers might be the one to destroy the home in some way. But Maribel isn't the only person in the house without a power. Maribel's abuela was gifted the magic candle that gave her family powers as well as the magical house it created, but she herself never received any power. Instead, she rooted herself as the stabilizing force in the family that helps them deal with all their powers, and ultimately, this is why Maribel couldn't have a power of her own. Abuela is getting older and she can't live forever, so as her grandchildren were being born, one of them was going to have to take over her role. And for one reason or another, the house knows that these people, while special, do not need a power. We talked a bit already about how these powers are really just used to emphasize the natural personalities and gifts of the people who have them, and Maribel is doing the same thing here. She doesn't have anything specific that makes her special, but that lack of a magic talent made her dedicated to taking care of the family and supporting them. She didn't always get it right, but she was learning, just like the others were learning as they mastered their powers. With Maribel rebuilding the house and her relationship with her family, she has proven that she has what it takes to manage them next, and I imagine if there ever is an Encanto TV series or sequel movies, it will largely deal with Maribel learning under her grandmother's wing, both teaching each other how to deal with certain problems so they can find their balance with their magical family. And one day, Abuela will pass on, and perhaps her room will become Maribel's, with Maribel helping Luisa, Dolores, Camilo, Antonio, and Isabella with raising their own magical children that they will one day have as part of their ever-growing magical family. But these are just my theories so far. What do you guys think? Let me know in a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.